We are celebrating 100 years at the foot of the cross. Our story is just a little slice when it comes to God's beloved history. Let us tell you the story of Fairview and Emmaus and King of Grace.
In the early 1900s, Minneapolis was growing dramatically due to European immigrants coming to work in the rapidly expanding lumber and milling industries, which were clustered on the north side of town along the Mississippi River. Many of this group lived northwest of what's now Broadway and Interstate 94. They walked to work on the basic dirt roads of the day. Norwegian immigrants made up a large part of this new population influx. The biggest Norwegian Lutheran church was Zion, located in this impressive twin-towered brick building at 26th and Lyndale North, which was built in 1910 and still stands today. A nationwide merger of the three Norwegian Lutheran synods took place in 1917. During the build-up to this merger, Zion's pastor, Christian Andersen, and a small group of Zion's members disagreed for doctrinal reasons. So in 1916, they went their own way and formed Fairview Lutheran Church. Initially, the group met in a member's home and then a rented building. Here on this vacant lot at 31st and Colfax in 1917, that small group of dedicated conservative Norwegian Lutherans built their new church, which would eventually become today's King of Grace Church. The site was chosen because it already had a house on it that could serve as the parsonage. Starting in the summer of 1917, the foundation was dug by hand by the members in the evening after the day's work was done. A contractor completed the new structure, and the building dedication was held on September 29, 1918. A small minority group of Norwegian Lutheran pastors and churches who objected to the national merger of the three largest Norwegian Lutheran synods boycotted the merger celebration in St. Paul on June 10, 1917. Their church service that day was held with the members of Fairview at their rented building. Then in June of 1918, representatives of this small group met at Lime Creek Church in northern Iowa to form their own new organization, to be called the Norwegian Synod of the American Evangelical Lutheran Church. Fairview's Pastor Andersen and one of its members attended this initial meeting, and in 1919 Fairview joined the new group. In 1921, a number of Fairview members attended the new synod's convention in Princeton, Minnesota. Fairview prospered and grew through the 1920s with only Norwegian language services initially, but gradually changing to predominantly English by the 1930s. It became a social center for its members, with baptisms, confirmation classes, funerals, and weddings. Music played a large role in Sunday services, with a substantial pipe organ and a dedicated choir, an important part of worship. In 1926, the organization meetings for Bethany Lutheran College were held at Fairview. Also in 1926, Fairview's Ladies' Aid Group supported a mission effort to be undertaken in the growing northern outskirts of Minneapolis. The new mission was called Emmaus, meeting in the basement of a house near Thomas and 42nd Avenue. The first pastor was Joseph Runholt. He was called to another church a year later, so in 1927, Pastor Sophus E. Lee was ordained and installed as the pastor at Emmaus. Through the Depression years, Emmaus members continued to meet in the house basement. In 1928 at Fairview, Pastor Andersen accepted a call to another church, and Pastor Christian Molstad became pastor. The church prospered during the 1920s and 30s, and in 1937 numbered 365 souls. The Depression years that followed were a difficult time for many members, but Fairview and Emmaus continued on. Use of the Norwegian language gradually died out and was mainly used when requested for funerals. Paying the pastors and operating the churches was a struggle, but somehow always happened. To raise money for church operations, the Fairview Ladies' Aid ran a diner tent at the state fair.
In the 30s, when there were financial problems in the country, the ladies stepped up and helped subsidize the expenses of the congregation by the profit made at the dining hall, State Fair Dining Hall. Some of the women would stay over there all during the fair. They would sleep in the back room of the dining hall, and they'd get up and peel potatoes and prepare the vegetables, and it was all done by hand, and it took a lot of time and a lot of work. Two men served as barkers in front of the dining hall at the State Fair. One was William Engel, or Bill Engel, and the other one was Ole Olson. And they would stand out there and encourage people to come in and eat, and they were very successful.
In 1936, Pastor Molstad was called to teach at Bethany, and Pastor Hans Teisty was called from Chicago to serve the congregation. He stayed for 20 years.
Our coming to Fairview was a real treat for all of us. My dad got very involved in the church life, as did all of us as children. And because we lived in the parsonage, which was attached to the church, every time there was something going on, we were a part of it. And everybody in the church treated us with wonderful love and affection. And I can't ask for a better 20 years to be with the members of Fairview Lutheran Church.
Emmaus was able in 1937 to obtain 2 lots at 40th and Thomas Avenue to build a new church, and this Gothic-styled building became its home.
My father went from door to door to get people to join the church, and as it grew, that was a wonderful experience.
As at Fairview, weddings, confirmations, and choir were important activities. In 1952, after 25 years at Emmaus, Pastor Lee accepted a call to northern Minnesota, and Pastor Ferdinand Weiland was called.
It was a very friendly congregation, and we felt at home there, and we were glad to be members.
Emmaus was this little island. For me, it was this island of social contact, God's Word, faithful pastor. I mean, it was our life.
Fairview's weddings, funerals, and confirmation classes continued. Sunday school was an important part of church members' life, as was the senior choir, the junior choir, the large ladies' aid group, and young people's societies. During the Second World War, 93 Fairview men and women served in the military. 6 of them gave their lives. Emmaus had 32 war veterans, all of whom returned home. A new organ at Fairview was dedicated in April 1948 to the memory of members' service in the armed forces.
The first 3 pastors of the congregation were Reverend Anderson, Reverend Volstead, and Reverend Hans Teisty. They all served extremely well, but I should give credit to Reverend Teisty because he spent most of his livelihood at Fairview and did a fantastic job during the difficult times and in growing the congregation.
In 1957, Pastor Teisty was called to Tacoma, Washington, and Pastor R.M. Branstad came to Fairview. Music was an important part of Pastor Branstad's time at Fairview. Both Fairview and Emmaus continued serving the Lord by providing spiritual training and congregational activities. In 1959, Fairview counted 597 baptized members and Emmaus 274. In 1966, Fairview celebrated its 50th anniversary with a banquet at the Ambassador Motor Lodge. Guest speaker was former Pastor Teisty, with the menu offering either what they called disjointed Southern fried chicken or Swiss-style steak. The photos looked like everyone had a great time.